Usually when we think about just looking up at the night sky, there's this expectation of tranquility. Like
Yeah.
you see the stars, maybe a passing satellite, and it feels like this vast, untouched
Sure,
frontier.
absolutely. It feels totally separate from everything down here.
Right. It feels completely separate from the chaos down here on Earth. But, well, that's not exactly the reality anymore, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, if you could actually visualize the digital and, frankly, the financial architecture currently being built in low Earth orbit, that quiet sky would look more like, I don't know, downtown Manhattan at rush hour.
Wow.
Yeah, it is incredibly congested, it's highly contested, and the stakes are quite literally astronomical right now. We are witnessing a fundamental rewiring of the global economy.
Which is wild to think about. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a $175 billion structural shift,
Mm.
and it's combining telecommunications, artificial intelligence, and national defense, all happening at, 25,000 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So welcome to today's deep dive. Let's look at the financial architecture of what we're calling Space Race 2.0. We have a super fascinating stack of sources to unpack for you today.
We really do. Some incredible data in here.
Yeah, including breaking financial news from StockTwits as of today, August 4, 2026, alongside some highly detailed equity research from AIM Partners and a whole flurry of recent corporate earnings reports from some major aerospace and tech players.
And, our goal today is to map out this rapidly accelerating race. We need to decipher what these billion-dollar moves by companies like SpaceX, Rocket Lab, AMD, and Kratos actually mean for the future of your global infrastructure.
Right, because these sources reveal that we have moved, way beyond the era of just simply launching probes or, putting astronauts on a space station.
Oh, yeah. The space economy is actively consuming terrestrial industries right now.
It really is. And we have to begin with the most immediate consumer impact of this migration, which is your cell phone service. We are looking at a $600 billion shakeup in the telecom industry.
Yeah, this is huge.
And this really kicked off during SpaceX's second quarter earnings call. So Gwynne Shotwell, the COO of SpaceX, dropped an absolute bombshell.
She really did. The market went crazy.
She announced plans to create a, quote, true mobile service. And, she wasn't just talking about bouncing an emergency text message to a hiker stranded out in the woods somewhere.
No, this is way bigger than that.
Right. She explicitly stated they are targeting the core customer bases of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. She actually said on the call, I anticipate us being able to acquire quite a few of their customers because I think our service will be better.
Which is, that is just an aggressive pivot. The big three U.S. carriers represent roughly a $600 billion annual market.
It's a massive market.
Right. And for years, these legacy telecom giants just viewed satellite providers as necessary partners,
Like a backup system.
Exactly. Satellites were just a way to patch up rural dead zones where building a physical cell tower just wasn't economically viable. The satellites basically just complemented the terrestrial network.
But Shotwell effectively announced that Starlink Mobile intends to build out its own terrestrial ground infrastructure. Like they're going to combine their satellite beams with newly built cell towers on the ground.
Yep, they want the whole thing.
SpaceX is no longer just filling in the rural gaps. They're threatening the core, dense urban networks that the legacy carriers rely on for the vast majority of their revenue. They're trying to own the entire pipeline.
And the market instantly saw the threat there. Following those remarks, shares for AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile all dropped in after-hours trading.
I saw that. Just a sea of red.
Yeah, because building a nationwide cellular network traditionally takes decades, right? And billions of dollars in permits, laying fiber optic cables, negotiating tower placements.
It's a logistical nightmare.
Exactly. And SpaceX is attempting to leapfrog all of that legacy red tape by delivering the network from above and then only building ground infrastructure where the data density absolutely requires it.
But, while the major telecom stocks took a big hit, retail traders on StockTwits noticed this really interesting hidden winner in all this chaos.
AST Space Mobile.
Yes, AST Space Mobile. Ticker symbol, ASTS. So their stock is on a 4-day winning streak, up 37% over the past year.
Which is wild timing.
It is. Message volume on StockTwits for ASTS jumped 60%. And traders are actually calling SpaceX's aggressive move the best strategic gift Elon Musk could have given them.
Which sounds totally counterintuitive, right? Like a competitor declaring total war would be a gift. But you really have to look at the underlying mechanics of how these cellular networks actually operate.
Okay, break that down for us. Why are the carriers panicking?
Well, AT&T and Verizon have spent decades and literally hundreds of billions of dollars acquiring their subscriber bases and their spectrum licenses.
And spectrum licenses are basically like the invisible real estate of the sky, right?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, they're the specific radio frequencies that a carrier legally owns to transmit data. And they desperately need a space-based cellular solution right now to defend against SpaceX and offer total coverage to their users.
Right, because if I can get service everywhere with SpaceX, why would I stay with Verizon?
Exactly. But they absolutely do not want to rent network space from the very company, SpaceX, that is now actively trying to steal their customers.
I mean, they'd be funding their own demise at that point.
Exactly. And that is what puts AST Space Mobile in such an incredibly powerful position. Unlike SpaceX, ASTS does not sell directly to consumers.
Right.
They don't want to steal your wireless contract. They just act as a neutral infrastructure partner. They put the hardware in space, but they use the carrier's existing spectrum to connect the calls.
So it is essentially like ASTS is playing Switzerland in this new telecom war.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
Like, while SpaceX is trying to conquer the legacy carriers' empires, ASTS is standing on the sidelines selling those exact same legacy carriers the shields they need to defend themselves.
And, to stretch that Switzerland analogy even further, they are offering a borderless defense that integrates seamlessly.
What do you mean by seamlessly?
Well, instead of requiring a bulky satellite phone with a massive antenna, ASTS unfurls these huge phased array antennas in low Earth orbit. And they are sensitive enough to pick up the faint signal from the standard, completely unmodified smartphone that's already in your pocket.
Oh, wow. So I don't need to buy a new phone.
Nope. The subscriber doesn't have to buy new hardware or switch providers, but suddenly they have coverage literally everywhere. The carrier keeps the customer relationship.
And the scale of that strategy is already showing massive results.
Yeah.
ASTS has nearly 60 mobile network partners globally now, including heavyweights like Vodafone and Rakuten, covering more than 3 billion subscribers.
It's massive.
Right, because in a market where vendor lock-in with a fierce rival is basically the ultimate nightmare, ASTS's independent carrier-first model is looking like a total lifeline.
Yeah, because SpaceX is essentially trying to build a global, vertically integrated telecom network from the ground up all the way into orbit, and running a global network of smart, dynamically routing satellites. That requires an unprecedented amount of compute power.
Right.
You cannot just beam that much data around the planet without heavy, heavy processing.
And that brings us to the second major collision in this space race, which is artificial intelligence and the silicon powering it. Because the numbers from SpaceX's Q2 financials are just staggering.
Oh, they're mind-blowing.
They posted $7.8 billion in revenue, which is up 92% year over year. Their Starlink subscribers doubled to 12 million. But the headline that caught everyone's attention is their capital expenditure.
The spending is insane.
Right, they spent $18.4 billion for the quarter, and out of that, $15.8 billion was spent just on AI compute infrastructure, specifically citing their Colossus project.
And see, people often visualize artificial intelligence as just software, right? Like a chatbot or a lightweight algorithm just kind of floating in the cloud somewhere.
Right, like it's invisible.
Exactly. But AI is physical, immensely heavy, power-hungry infrastructure. You are building massive, sprawling farms of silicon chips.
And Elon Musk actually announced a massive pivot regarding that exact silicon on the earnings call. He stated SpaceX is dropping AMD chips and moving exclusively to NVIDIA.
Yep, specifically their next-generation Vera Rubin architecture.
Right. He basically declared it the only system capable of handling their roadmap.
And the choice of the Vera Rubin architecture is highly specific to the environment they are targeting here. These chips are designed not just for raw processing speed, but for extreme energy efficiency.
Because power is an issue up there.
Exactly. When you are operating in space, you don't have access to an infinite power grid. You are relying on solar panels and batteries. Efficiency is literal survival.
And they need that efficiency for a project they're calling StarMind AI-1. Right. They are partnering with NVIDIA to build a fleet of satellites that will literally act as data centers in orbit, which is expected to launch as early as next year.
Which is just a crazy timeline.
But wait, I have to stop and ask how this is physically possible. Because data centers on Earth require massive air conditioning and like millions of gallons of water just to keep the servers from melting down.
Right. They run extremely hot.
But space is a vacuum. How in orbit are they keeping these servers cool?
Yeah, so thermal management in a vacuum is one of the hardest engineering challenges in all of aerospace. Because there is no air, you cannot use convection cooling. You can't just blow a fan across a hot chip.
Because there's nothing to blow.
Exactly. The only way to get rid of heat is through radiation, so they have to build these specialized liquid cooling loops that pull the heat away from the NVIDIA processors and then pump it out to massive flat radiator panels that just emit the thermal energy out into the deep freeze of space.
That is incredibly complex. Why go through all that trouble? Like, why not just beam the data down to a normal data center on Earth where you can just plug in a fan?
It comes down to latency and bandwidth. If you have military sensors or, Earth observation satellites generating terabytes of raw data every single second, beaming all that raw data down to Earth requires massive bandwidth.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then processing it on the ground and beaming the actionable intelligence back up, that takes time. By putting the data center in space, the satellites can process the raw data locally, identify the missile launch or the troop movement instantly, and then only transmit the tiny packet of critical information back down to Earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it cuts the response time from minutes to milliseconds.
And the financial projections attached to owning this orbital data center network are wild. SpaceX expects to hit a $100 billion annualized revenue run rate by December of 2026.
Unbelievable numbers.
And they believe they could hit $1 trillion in annual revenue by 2029 or 2030. Let's just put that into perspective for a second. A $1 trillion run rate would make SpaceX larger than Amazon's entire retail business.
Which is hard to wrap your head around.
It is. But they also reported a Q2 net loss of $541 million. So they're losing $500 million in 3 months, yet they carry a private valuation of $1.5 trillion.
Yep.
That makes a single private company more valuable than most of the legacy aerospace sector combined.
So I have to push back here. Is this valuation actually justified by the fundamentals, or are we just looking at AI hype fueled by these massive Musk promises?
Well, traders are heavily debating that exact point right now. A $1.5 trillion valuation for a company that isn't turning a net profit is, well, it's priced for absolute perfection.
Right. It assumes everything goes perfectly.
It assumes that SpaceX will establish an unbreakable monopoly on both global satellite internet and orbital AI processing. The cash burn is alarming, sure, but private equity is willing to fund it because the demand for AI compute infrastructure is undeniably real.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And whoever builds it first basically sets the toll rates for the next century. And we can see the reality of that demand reflected in what happened to AMD. They lost the SpaceX contract, and AMD stock fell 8.6% overnight.
Rough night for them.
Very rough. And on top of losing their biggest space client, AMD announced they were doubling their own CapEx to $808 million.
And on the surface, losing a major client and doubling your spending looks like a total disaster. But digging into AMD's actual earnings reveals a totally different story.
Right, because the pie is growing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their Q2 revenue climbed 50% to $11.5 billion. Their data center chip sales more than doubled. Retail traders on StockTwits actually shifted to extremely bullish on AMD, despite that initial stock drop.
Because they are looking past the SpaceX loss.
Right, because the broader AI market is expanding so rapidly. Traders view AMD's doubled capex not as a sign of panic, but as necessary aggression to capture market share in a multi-year AI cycle.
Yeah, I see.
I mean, AMD generated over $1.5 billion in free cash flow just for the quarter, proving they can easily finance this expansion. The underlying necessity of AI compute is so foundational right now that multiple chip makers can thrive simultaneously, even without SpaceX.
But when you look at the company actually deploying all that silicon into orbit, you see a very different kind of market dynamic forming. Because SpaceX wants to own the telecom network, they want to own the orbital data centers, and they already dominate the rockets getting everything up there.
They want it all.
Yeah. So if you are a major commercial client, or more importantly, if you're the U.S. government, you are looking at this monopolistic behemoth and realizing you cannot have all your eggs in one basket.
No, you really can't. Vendor diversity is a critical security doctrine. The Pentagon and major telecom players cannot allow themselves to be entirely dependent on a single supplier controlled by one individual.
Especially for something this vital.
Exactly. For something as vital as space access and digital infrastructure, they absolutely need leverage.
And that need for leverage brings us to Rocket Lab, ticker symbol RKLB. So according to the equity research from AIM Partners, Rocket Lab is affectionately known in the industry as the mini SpaceX.
Which is a huge compliment.
It really is. And they've earned that title because they're the only publicly traded company offering a fully vertically integrated end-to-end space solution. They don't just launch the rockets, they actually manufacture the satellite systems that go on them.
And that vertical integration is a massive competitive moat. In traditional aerospace, you have one company building the satellite, another company builds the reaction wheels, and then a third company provides the launch vehicle.
It's all pieced together.
Right. But by doing it all in-house, Rocket Lab controls the costs, they streamline the testing schedules, and they guarantee compatibility.
It is essentially like a restaurant that doesn't just cook your meal.
Yeah.
Like they own the farms that grew the vegetables, they own the trucks that delivered the ingredients, and they own the physical building you are eating in. It gives them total control over the end product.
I love that analogy. And to push your restaurant analogy just a bit further, the U.S. military is essentially saying, we are no longer willing to eat at a restaurant if we do not control the entire supply chain.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, security demands transparency from start to finish. And we just saw Rocket Lab win a $397 million contract with the U.S. Space Force for a program called SBAMTI, which stands for Space-Based Airborne Moving Target Indicator.
Okay, so what exactly are they building for $397 million?
They are developing a constellation of what they call Flattellites.
Flatellite.
Yeah, Flattellites. These are next-generation flat panel satellites specifically optimized to be stacked and deployed in really large clusters. And they are equipped with advanced space-based sensors and utilize AI-driven processing to detect and track airborne threats in real time.
So instead of relying on a billion-dollar single radar plane flying at 30,000 feet that could, easily be shot down, they were distributing that tracking capability across a whole swarm of these flatelites in low Earth orbit.
Exactly. Distributing the architecture makes the tracking system highly resilient. If an adversary takes out one or two satellites, the network just heals itself and the tracking continues seamlessly.
That's incredible.
And Rocket Lab isn't just manufacturing these Flattellites. They are launching them on their upcoming medium-lift Neutron rocket, and they are operating the constellation from secure facilities. It is the end-to-end model fully realized.
And the execution on that model is pretty undeniable. I mean, Rocket Lab maintains a 98% success rate across 69 missions of their smaller Electron rocket.
That's a great track record.
Yeah, and they are preparing the much larger, partially reusable Neutron rocket for late 2026, which will compete directly with SpaceX's Falcon 9. Plus, their contract backlog is now sitting at around $1 billion, split almost evenly between government and commercial clients.
It's a really healthy mix.
It is, and they recently cemented another $266 million deal with the Space Force, specifically for suborbital launches. So they're really cementing their place as the alternative.
They definitely are. And their Q1 2025 financials posted a 32% year-over-year revenue growth. The U.S. military is actively using its immense purchasing power to prop up Rocket Lab as the necessary redundancy in the market.
And distributing these satellites for resilience ties directly into the new threat that is pushing all this defense spending. Because this reliance on space infrastructure is reshaping way more than just your internet speeds and AI processing.
Oh, absolutely.
It is fundamentally altering modern warfare. We're basically looking at a hypersonic arms race.
Yes. And Eric DeMarco, the CEO of Kratos Defense and Security Solutions, used those exact words on their recent earnings call. A hypersonic arms race.
Which is pretty chilling to hear. Kratos, ticker symbol KTOS, saw their stock jump after reporting Q2 revenue of nearly $459 million, which is up over 30% year-over-year.
Lots of jump.
Yeah. And DeMarco explicitly stated that the hypersonic arms race is accelerating, and Kratos expects its hypersonics business to grow from around $200 million last year to roughly $400 million in 2026, and potentially hit $700 million by 2027.
And see, hypersonic weapons are exactly what's forcing this migration to low Earth orbit. Because a hypersonic missile travels at Mach 5 or faster.
Which is over a mile a second.
Right, over a mile every second. And unlike a traditional ballistic missile that follows a very predictable arc, a hypersonic vehicle can maneuver unpredictably in the upper atmosphere.
So you can't just calculate where it's going to land.
Exactly. And because of the curvature of the Earth, traditional ground-based radar systems cannot see them until it is far too late. The radar is essentially blinded by the horizon, so the only way to track and defend against a hypersonic threat is to look down from above.
which is exactly what the Golden Dome project, which was highlighted in the AIM Partners research, is designed to do.
Yeah, the Golden Dome is a planned next-generation layered missile defense system. It requires hundreds of LEO or low Earth orbit satellites to create an unbroken space-based sensor network.
And the numbers on this are just insane.
They are. The AIM research notes that a staggering $175 billion is planned for this space infrastructure, with an initial $25 billion already authorized.
And Rocket Lab is playing in this exact arena too with their HASTE launch vehicle. They are actually running suborbital hypersonic tests for both the U.S. Defense Department and the UK Ministry of Defense.
Which is crucial testing.
Right. And for anyone wondering, a suborbital flight basically means a rocket goes up, it reaches the edge of space, but it doesn't have the horizontal velocity to stay in orbit. It comes back down on a ballistic trajectory.
Right, right.
And Rocket Lab uses this flight path to mimic the speed and altitude of an incoming hypersonic weapon. Gives the military a highly accurate moving target to test their new tracking sensors against in real time.
It basically creates a perfect closed-loop testing environment for these new defense architectures.
But I have to ask this on behalf of anyone listening to these numbers, because
Yeah.
we are throwing around some truly eye-watering figures here.
Yeah.
I mean, $175 billion for the Golden Dome, $15.8 billion on AI compute in a single quarter for SpaceX.
It's a lot of zeros.
Is this space defense boom a sustainable long-term economic shift? Or are we just looking at a temporary panic cycle driven by current geopolitical tensions?
Well, analyzing the defense spending trends across all these various sources, the evidence points firmly to a permanent structural change in global defense strategy.
Permanent.
Yes. Whether you analyze the budgets of the US, the UK, or their strategic competitors, the doctrine has irrevocably shifted. Terrestrial warfare and traditional airspace are no longer the primary focus. Space is the ultimate high ground.
Wow.
Designing, launching, and integrating these satellite constellations and orbital tracking facilities, it takes years, often decades, to fully operationalize. The capital being deployed by companies like Kratos and Rocket Lab, and the government contracts funding them, are modeled on multi-decade life cycles. This is the new baseline for global security. It's not just a temporary spike.
Well, let's bring this all back down to earth and really back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
Because what these financial reports, the equity research notes, and these earnings calls demonstrate is that the definition of space has completely evolved.
It really has.
It's no longer a distant, quiet realm reserved for scientific probes or astronauts floating in a space station.
No, it is the active construction zone for the next century of human infrastructure.
Exactly. Space is where your future cell phone service is going to originate. Whether you are paying a direct disruptor like SpaceX or relying on a neutral integration partner like AST Space Mobile connecting to your standard smartphone.
Right.
It is where the artificial intelligence processing your data will physically live, housed in these orbiting liquid-cooled data centers to eliminate latency. And it is where the defense systems actively protecting your country from hypersonic threats are being built and deployed right now. The digital and physical infrastructure of the modern world is migrating upward.
The sources show a clear, undeniable trajectory that connects consumer telecom, raw computing power, and national survival into a single orbital ecosystem.
Which leaves us with one final, frankly somewhat unsettling thought to mull over. If companies like SpaceX are successfully putting data centers like Starmine AI-1 into orbit, and our telecom networks are shifting their core routing to space, then low Earth orbit is effectively becoming our most critical digital infrastructure.
It's the new backbone.
Right. The backbone of the global economy is moving off the planet. So what happens to global security when our most vital servers, our financial networks, and our communication grids are no longer protected by physical national borders?
That is the big question.
What happens when the core of our digital lives is floating in a highly congested, politically neutral, and physically vulnerable orbital environment, flying at 25,000 miles per hour? It redefines the concept of security entirely.
It forces us to ask how you protect a borderless asset that the entire world depends on.
Definitely something to keep in mind the next time you look up at that seemingly quiet night sky. We hope this deep dive helped you connect the dots on Space Race 2.0 and the massive financial shifts happening right above our heads. Keep your eyes on the stars and perhaps on your stock portfolios as well.
Thanks for joining us.